Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'm TJ Kirk, coming to you from Freed Hardeman University, and I'm excited to celebrate Black History Month with you. And that's exactly what this month should be, a celebration. A celebration of people with dark skin who have accomplished feats and changed the world you live in for the better. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, why don't we have a White History Month? Why do we have to have a Black History Month? Well, it's because without it, there's a lot of people that you would go your whole life and never, ever hear of. Some amazing people that just because of the time that they lived in have been forgotten to history. And so we take a month to look back, to appreciate, and to celebrate the people who have done these things and who might have been forgotten without this month. People like Matthew Henson. You see, he's the very first person to reach the North Pole. The North Pole, he got there first. As a matter of fact, he got there 45 minutes before the person who got the credit. You see, he grew up and lived during the Jim Crow era. And there was no way in the world they were going to give credit to a black man for a feat that amazing. So even though during that time, he didn't get the credit he deserved for being an amazing explorer and reaching new heights and finding places that have never been visited before, he gets the credit now. And we're able to recognize and appreciate and celebrate his greatness. And speaking of greatness, let's talk a little bit about royalty. I want to introduce you to a man named Mansa Musa. He is a great king, one that you may not have heard of before. But not only is he a king, he is considered to be the most wealthy man who has ever lived at any point in time in history. It's estimated that his net worth would be $400 billion if translated to today's time. Can you imagine that much money? It's recorded that as he made his pilgrimage to Mecca and traveled through Egypt, his caravan spent so much gold, it caused inflation to take place in that nation. That means they gave so much gold away that the value of gold went down because there was now so much of it. Incredible. Not only was he wealthy, he was also responsible for moving his empire along in the areas such as science and philosophy, religion, and architecture. He did a lot of great things for his empire, for his continent, and for the world. And because of this month, Black History Month, we get to continue to celebrate his greatness and make sure his name is never forgotten. And lastly, I'd like to introduce you to a man named Mark Dean. Every time you hit print, you have him to thank because he invented the technology that allowed computers to speak to a printer and allow them to work together for you to be able to print out what you have typed on your monitor. It's incredible. And there are so many other great feats that have been accomplished by men and women with dark skin. Again, it's a wonder that we have this month, that we can reflect, that we can appreciate, and we can celebrate them. It's also important that we're able to look back at a period of time that wasn't so pleasant for Black people in this country. And we look back not with the purpose of pointing fingers, blaming people who had nothing to do with the things that took place back then. We look back to appreciate how far we've come. We look back to say thank you to men and women who had a dream that one day we could live a better life than they did. And they believed in that dream so much that many of them risked their lives to make it come to fruition. Obviously, I'm speaking of great men and women like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King and Medgar Evers and many, many more. Hopefully during this time, we don't forget to celebrate and recognize them and appreciate the fact that we are living the life that they could only dream of. Hopefully one day, we reach a point where there's no longer a need for Black History Month, because American history fairly represents all of the people who comprise this great nation. But until then, I ask that you appreciate this month for what it is: a time to celebrate, a time to appreciate, a time to look back and recognize how far we've come. I thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Black History Month. Take care.
Fritz Paylor, the son of a boxer, Fritz Paylor had grit in his veins. At 5 foot 9 inches and 160 pounds, he was small for football, but that didn't stop him from bulldozing barriers and on and off the field. Pollard attended Brown University, where he majored in chemistry and played halfback on the football team. He was the school's first African-American player and led Brown to the 1916 Rose Bowl. After serving in the Army during World War I, he joined Akron Pros on the American Professional Football Association, which later became the NFL. He was one of the 2 African-American players in the new league. In 1920, he was still a player. The team also named its coach the first African-American head coach in league history. Over the next several years, Paylor coached 4 different teams and founded a Chicago football team of all African-American players. Pollard was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2005.
Althea Gibson, long before Venus and Serena Williams, another tall, young African-American woman shook up the world of tennis with her strong serve and brilliant play. She was Althea Gibson, and tennis had long been a segregated sport when her skill and strength broke the color barrier in the 1950s. Gibson's path to tennis stardom was unusual. She grew up in Harlem on a block where, as luck would have it, New York City police blocked traffic so the neighborhood kids could play sports. There, she learned paddle tennis and took the sport so quickly she won a citywide tournament at age 12. Recognizing her talent, neighbors raised funds to help pay for tennis lessons, and a career was born. Gibson began winning local and regional tournaments, but was barred from national events because of her race. In 1950, though, after intense lobbying, she became the first African-American to compete in the U.S. National Championships, the precursor to the U.S. Open. In 1956, Gibson became the first African-American player to win a Grand Slam tournament, the French Championships. The next year, she was the first African-American champion in the 80-year history of Wimbledon, receiving the trophy from Queen Elizabeth II. By the time Gibson retired from tennis, she had won 11 Grand Slam titles and was the world's top-ranked female player.
Bessie Coleman, from 1892 to 1926, the first African-American woman to become a pilot. Born to sharecroppers in a small Texas town, Elizabeth Betsy Coleman became interested in flying while living in Chicago, where stories about World War I pilots caught her interest. But flight schools in the U.S. wouldn't let her in because of her race and gender. Undeterred, Coleman learned French, moved to Paris, and enrolled in a prestigious aviation school, where in 1921 she became the first African-American woman to earn a pilot's license. Back in the U.S., Coleman began performing on the barnstorming circuit, earning cheers for her daring loops, acrobatic figure eights, and her other aerial stunts. Fans called her Queen Bees. And Charles Richard Drew, from 1904 to 1950. Anyone who has ever had a blood transfusion owes a debt to Charles Richard Drew, whose immense contributions to the medical field made him one of the most important scientists of the 20th century. Drew helped develop America's first large-scale blood banking program in the 1940s, earning him accolades as the father of the blood bank. Drew won a sports scholarship for football and track and field at Amherst College, where a biology professor piqued his interest in medicine. At the time, racial segregation limited the options for the medical training for African Americans, leading Drew to attend med school at McGill University in Montreal. He then became the first African American student to earn a medical doctorate from Columbia University, where his interest in science of blood transfusions led to groundbreaking work separating plasma from blood. This made it possible to store blood for a week, a huge breakthrough for doctors treating wounded soldiers in World War II. Drew also pioneered the Bloodmobile, a refrigerated truck that collected, stored, and transported blood donations to where they needed to be. James Armistead Lafayette, from 1748 to 1830. He spied on the British Army as a double agent. Under Lafayette, the French general who helped the American colonists fight for their freedom, James infiltrated the British Army as a spy near the end of the Revolutionary War. He once reported to Benedict Arnold, the traitorous colonist who betrayed his troops to fight for the British, and he provided crucial intelligence that helped defeat the British and end the war. Lafayette dispatched him as a spy, posing as a runaway slave, and he joined British forces in Virginia, who valued his knowledge of the local terrain. Once he'd gained their trust, Armistead moved back and forth between the two armies' camps, feeding false information to the British while secretly documenting their strategies and relaying them to Lafayette. His most crucial intel detailed British General Charles Cornwallis' plans to move thousands of troops from Portsmouth to Yorktown. Armed with this knowledge, Lafayette alerted George Washington, and they set up a blockade around Yorktown, which led to Cornwallis' surrender. Virginia lawmakers, after lobbying by Lafayette, granted Armistead his freedom in 1787. Jane Bolin, from 1908 to 2007, the first African American woman judge in the U.S. Jane Bolin made history over and over. She was the first African American woman to graduate from Yale Law School, the first African American woman to join the New York City Bar Association, the nation's first African American female judge.